Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. Today, we're going to interview one of my friends, a guy that I've known for a decade now, and a guy that is an influencer in so many different ways because of what he's able to do in his training programs that help either young, middle-aged, or even old people get better to enhance what they have and to improve their physical, mental, and spiritual skills all rolled into one. But mainly what he does is takes care of rising juniors or seniors that are eligible for the NFL draft and get them ready for the combine. I'm talking about Chip Smith. Chip joins us today. Now, unfortunately, Vincent Turner has a day off. He has some family issues that we wish him well, obviously. And Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, is going to join me today. But before we go any further, Chip, I'm so honored to have you on the show here today. Thank you for being a guest here on 100 Yards of Football.
Well, Harper, we've been friends for a long time, and our connections go way deep, and it's a small fraternity. Whether you play together, you coach together, or your teammates. So anytime I could come on your show, I'm honored to do that.
Well, thank you very much. You have certainly got quite a resume that we're going to go into. Competitive Edge Sports, Hammersmith Sports, your training program, your network of connectivity with the National Football League, of course, with the Olympic Games, everything. But real quick, the story that I love to tell anybody is I'm rolling around in a Kroger in Swanee, Georgia, and I'm wearing this beat up old sweat top and a pair of jeans. And I go from aisle A to aisle B, and you're standing at the edge of the aisle right where I'm making that turn. And you said you must be a cagey old veteran to be wearing an old beat up NFL Players Association sweat top like that. And without skipping a beat, I didn't turn, I didn't make eye contact with you. And I said, well, you must know a thing or two about cagey old NFL players wearing sweat tops in order to recognize a sweat top like that. And then I turned around, I shook your hand, I said, I'm Harper LeBel. And you said, I'm Chip Smith. And I said, wait a second, are you the Chip Smith? And the lawyer in you said, well, that all depends. And I love that answer because, well, the Chip Smith that I know of is the one that takes a linebacker from anywhere university. And he's probably a 6th or 7th or 8th round draft pick, and he runs a 4.9 40, and he can bench 2 1/4 about 17 times. And then he spends a month or two with you, Chip, and he runs a 4.7, and he can bench 2 1/4 24 times, and you turn him into a millionaire because you make him a 2nd round pick. Are you that Chip Smith? And you said, I am. What a great answer. And welcome to the show, Chip, because you perform what I would call sports miracles and get guys ready to where they can play at the next level faster than what other people are doing.
Well, I'm very humbled that you would say that. And, it is unique because we're able to take in a short period of time, when you really think about college players at a university for 5 years, and in 2 months, we're able to decrease their 40 time about 2/10, increase their rep range, 10 to 15 reps in 225, and get them ready for the biggest job interview of their life. And so, it's just being purposeful. But really, and I want to say this up front. And again, my dad told me growing up, if you got to tell somebody how good you are, but when you're humble, it's not about us. It's about our players that we work with, and they're blessed. They're this diamond, and that's God-given talent. I don't ever take credit for that, but I think what I do have is I do have the right polish. That when I polish that diamond, I tilt it to circles. That for 37 years, and this past year put me at 3,700 players I've trained for the NFL Combine.
Wow! So about 100 a year is what your average. Your size of a class isn't always 100, though, is it?
No, in the early years it was. There were, Harper, there was early years. So I was the very first guy that started the combine training business. My first draftable player was Garrison Hurst in 91. So I was the guy that started that business. And since then, there were years in the 90s where I had 130 players. I had 3 full players, 3 full rounds. So and I was the first guy. And then in the mid 90s, Tom Shaw started down in Orlando, or actually was in New Orleans. And then some other guys, got in the 2000s. But being the first guy, again, at the end of the day, if it's about money, and if I can take a player and like you said, and I can move him up in the draft, well, it's worth millions of dollars to guys that are, late round draft picks that move up, go from a 5th round to a 3rd round, or somebody like Brian Urlacher went from a 3rd round to the top 10 pick. So at the end of the day, that's why agents spend the money, invest in their players, because they get a return on their investment.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've always been of the notion you can't teach what you don't know. And you're basically transferring some information and training skill levels, really specific muscle twitch fiber stuff that you can get really scientific with, Chip. But basically, you're teaching people how to run faster, how to jump a little bit higher, how to get a little bit stronger just before that most important interview, which is the combine. And it's the major test where you've got 15 linebackers. And if I'm at 14th, I'm not going to get picked as high. But if I move up to 6 or 4, then I've got a chance really to make some extra money. Is that basically how you look at it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, for me, again, at the end of the day, it's about the players. We worry about the things that we can control, which is your work, your work ethic, your preparation, your attitude. Who drafts you, what round, what team, we leave it up to the Lord. He's going to put you where you're supposed to be. Excuse me. But when you believe that, it takes all the pressure off, So for us, we set realistic goals. When players come in, we do pre and post testing. We set realistic goals for them based on where they're at, based on, if this time is 30 years of experience. Nobody has more experience in developing talent for the NFL than I do. Again, not physical talent, but just the testing and evaluation and preparing them for their job interview. And these guys spend 6 hours a day with me. So they do 2 hours of speed work on the field. They do 2 hours of weight work. And then they're back on the field with my skills coaches. And my skills coaches are John Stinchcomb, Ray Buchanan, some of the top NFL players, Bob Whitfield, guys that you've played with that come back and do their off season or do the combine training with me. So they'll spend 6 hours a day. We do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're in the pool for recovery. Then I'm one of the only guys in the country that does, because I've had so many Division I quarterbacks. We go out and we do 7-on-7. And so we actually compete. So we go out to the field and we do 7-on-7, with receivers running routes and DBs covering and linebackers covering. So they do that Monday through Friday. Saturday is an optional day. And then on top of that, the recovery component, is important in the diet. I mean, we have a chef, the executive chef that does all their food. They come in every day and they've got 4 meals, 3 or 4 meals a day and, 2 snacks plus all their supplements. So, it's pretty intense. Excuse me.
Well, the neat thing about it for me, Chip, is that it works. I go way back to the early 1970s when Tommy John, the pitcher for the LA Dodgers, had a surgical issue with his elbow. Dr. Frank Jobe fixes him up. They have a cadaver ligament that they put in. It didn't work. He had to do the thing all over again and missed a whole full other year. But the recovery process for him is still what they use today. Light throwing a week afterwards or 2 weeks afterwards. All the things that you would do, it still works today. It sounds to me, Chip, like what you learned 30, 31 years ago is still working at the same type of efficiency that you would need it, because you didn't have to change it, but it's work. Get out on the field. You run a little bit, then you lift a little bit, then you recover in the pool, and you do it again, and you do it with more intensity. Am I missing something in terms of the formula that you have?
No, that's exactly what you got to do. So, but again, when you structure it so that every day they come in, they know exactly what they're doing, and they buy into the process. That makes it, it's that's the biggest thing, is understanding. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the turf when you get to me, because there's been some really good players that I've been blessed to train. I'm sorry, my throat's just locking up.
That's okay. I was talking a little bit. Do you need to get a sip of water real quick?
Yeah, I got some right here. Oh.
Okay.
You might have to edit that. Anyway, so, you know, and I don't know if you want me to tell the story real quick about Ali Marpet, but I think that story is incredible. So 8 years ago, a father called me.
This guy that nobody knew, what, Hofstra? He's just a small town guy that he had some talent, but what were you able to do for Ali?
Well, Ali was played at Hobart College. So when his father called me, he said, Coach Smith, I've talked to some NFL guy to train my son. And I said, well, tell me about your son. Excuse me. He said, my son's 6'4", 285. He plays guard, a little undersized for guard for weight to speed ratio in the NFL. And I said, where does he play? So that's the problem. He plays at Hobart College. I said, is that an NAI school? Is it a D2 school? He said, no, coach, it's a D3 school. I said, well, sir, I don't mean any disrespect to you, but down here in Georgia where I live, we have single A high schools that can beat most D3 programs. I said, but let me do this. Let me make some calls. The kid didn't have a draft grade. He didn't have a PFA, priority free agent, or an FA, free agent grade. He had nothing. So I called my buddy with the Bengals, Mark Duffner. I said, Coach Duff, tell me about this kid, Ali Marpet. He said, Coach, he's a pretty good D3 player. He's not going to get drafted, but he might get in camp. So I called the father back. The kid didn't have an agent. I said, okay, here's the deal. I'll take your son if you're willing to pay. I mean, he doesn't have an agent that's going to pay. I said, but I'll take your son. But I want to manage unrealistic expectations. So Ali gets to me, 6'4", 285. He runs a 5'1" 40, which was good. He did 13 reps with 225, which was pathetic. But I knew we would be able to, into the season, we'd be able to get him stronger. So he comes in every day. He's working with me while everybody else is playing postseason game, bowl games. Ali's with me in December. And he's working with Bob Whitfield and John Stinchcomb doing his skills work. So the week before the NFL Combine, Ali comes in the office. He says, Coach, I got invited to Indy. I said, no, you got invited to a regional combine. He said, no, I got invited to Indianapolis. I said, Ali, there are only Power 5 players at Indianapolis. There was 53. He said, no, I got invited. So anyway, he brought in his invite. Sure enough, he got invited. Now, I know it was a God thing, but so he goes to Indianapolis. He'd been with me for 2 months, 8 weeks. He gets on the scales. He goes from 285 to 315.
Wow.
He goes from 13 reps to 31. He goes from a 5'1" 40 to a 4'8" Ali Marpet got drafted in the second round.
Yes, he
the
did.
highest player ever drafted in the history of the National Football League. Fast forward 7 years. He retired last year. He was the highest paid guard in the National Football League. He got a ring with Tampa, Super Bowl ring with Tampa, and he played in the Pro Bowl. Now, here's what I say to parents who have kids that want to play. I can reach in a bag and I can pull out a stopwatch and measure your 40. I can reach in a bag and I can pull out a vertex and measure your vertical. I can reach in a bag and pull out a bench and measure your 225. But until the NFL can figure out how to reach in that bag and pull something out that can measure this, I will never tell a kid he can't play.
Right.
Greatest story in the history of the National Football League, Ali Marpet.
Yep.
So,
hey, Chip, the naysayers would go, oh, what kind of drug test could he pass? Because he was obviously taking all kinds of everything that's out there, including stuff we haven't even heard of yet, don't even know how to test for. What's your response to that?
Well, here's what I say to them. I've been doing this 37 years, 3,700 NFL players. Bring me one player of the 3,700 that I've given drugs to. One.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. So again, at the end of the day, when you've never been in a structured program that's geared specifically for you, all these kids that get to me, they play for the name on the front of that jersey. I work for the name on the back of that jersey.
Yep.
So when that kid gets to me, I sit down with him. I say, look, I had another story. I'll tell you this story. I had a player that played at Alabama, first team All-American. He comes in, he goes, Coach, I talked to you. I said, sure. He said, do you think I can play? His name was James Carpenter. I said, James, You're 6'7". You're 330 pounds. You were first team All-American. You were first team All-SEC. Why would you not think you could play? He said, well, my coach, my offensive line coach at that time told me I wasn't good enough to play. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Well, let's show him. Let's show him. So every day James came in, he worked. I made a call to the Hawks offensive line coach at that time. I said, I got a kid that played at Alabama, great feet, hard worker, put him in the first round. And he's had a long career. I think he played 13 years. So again, what's crazy is the two stats that people don't understand in my world is on a 53-man roster, there's 53 men, and then you have a practice squad. But on the 53-man roster, about 45% of those players were undrafted free agents. So the NFL is wrong almost half the time on assessing talent. Think about that.
Yeah.
Now, I spent 4 years at the NFL Hall of Fame running the program for the NFL Alumni Academy there in Canton. And I realized this when I was there. There are more undrafted free agents in the NFL Hall of Fame than there are drafted players.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's amazing.
So again, at the end of the day, when you buy into the program, and that's what I kept telling Allie, I said, you have to trust the process. There's a process. We know what we're doing. We've been doing it, every day for 35 years. And I said, you're going to get better. You're going to get faster. You're going to get stronger. And he did. I mean, he completely changed his body and he was a highest paid offensive guard in the National Football League. And I think his last contract was $50 million, 4 year, $55 million. That's about what you made it.
It reminds me of the old Sammy Ball line where Sammy goes, "These doggone players today are making more money in one game than I made in my entire career." Yes, that's kind of the way that it is. But you can't measure the heart or the things, either good or bad, Chip, that a coach or a parent will tell you that happen in between your ears and the way that you believe about yourself. Hey, before I move on, this is fascinating stuff. Don't get me wrong. I wanted to ask from an injury perspective, if you're training the right way, right, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff as much, but tendon, muscular, ligament, you're putting a lot of pressure on guys in a short amount of time with different training. So how do you keep injuries at a minimum?
Well, that's a great point. And, when I actually did my graduate work in Russia. And one of the things the Russians did, it convinced me, as athletes, we were good at making our athletes strong, but we didn't do anything for recovery. So now we have hyperbaric, we have cryo machines that, being 3 minutes in the cryo machine is equal to 24 hours in a cold tub, 190 below zero. We have red light therapy. Diet is pristine. So these guys, from the time they get there, the time they leave, make sure that their recovery is as important as their training time. So in the mornings, pre or post, then they're in, they're getting in the hyperbaric chambers and in the red light, getting in, what we call contrast training in hot or cold. So that's very, very important when you're putting your body in a stressful situation by training, 6 hours a day. It's really long days.
And many people forget about the rest portion of recovery, getting good sleep. If you work a guy out hard enough, he's just going to fall asleep naturally. But tell me what your training over the years has told you about how important it is to get your not just 6, but 8 to 9 hours of sleep, or even more in some cases.
Yeah, and that is very important. We and I usually, what we'll say is on Wednesdays is our pool day. We call it a recovery day, but it's the most intense workout they do because most athletes can't swim. So we have them, they wear flotation devices, and we're in Swim Atlanta, and, we got them doing cord stuff, and they're doing, freestyle and breaststroke. I'll tell them, I said, when you go home tonight, when you go back to your apartment, you're going to, and I said, and don't let it bother you, because you're going to sleep like a baby. Because, you take a nap in the afternoon, you're thinking, I don't want to do that because I can't sleep at nighttime. The next day I said, hey, did you take a nap? Coach, I was knocked out. So again, that being in the cold water, the cold water is refreshing on your body. It's great for recovery. It's very important. And I think it's kind of the secret sauce to my success in my system. So Very, very important. Sleep.
Well, Chip,
So minimum 8 hours. Minimum of 8 hours.
hey Chip, if you get involved, everybody now seems to be selling these cold tub that you can put in your back deck in the backyard. Do you have the Chip Smith cold tub ready to capitalize on some of the great marketing with that?
Well, that's social media stuff. These guys, everybody's, making money on somebody. I don't do that. I never have done it. But I mean, it is good to have, for recovery.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that and well, some of the techniques that you have, and we'll get into this a little bit as we proceed, but some of the things that there are other companies, there are other businesses, there are other people that try to do the same type of thing, and I'm not excluding any one of them. We're full disclosure is that there is competition out there, but no one has 37 years of experience, that's for sure. And you've been able to do it in a way that just keeps everybody coming back to you, in my opinion, in terms of new groups of seniors and rising juniors that are looking to get themselves ready for the National Football League. And the draft process includes the combine, or even if you're not invited, to where you're better for these workouts, and you have ways to help people.
Yeah. And, again, as sad as this to say, it's about money. Agents, a lot of agents or parents are investing money in their children, so they want to get a return on that investment. Whatever you're paying to train me, or it's a Chip Smith at Gold's Gym, you get what you pay for. And what I tell kids all the time, I say, look, if you're going to have heart surgery, do you want a surgeon that's done one successful surgery, or do you want one that's done thousands? Well, I've done thousands. So you got one shot at the biggest job in your life. So whatever I charge, if I didn't get results, your agent will not be sending you to me. So again, but it's changing. The dynamics of the agent business is changing in pro football, because back when you played, you had an agent that did your contract. He negotiated the length of your contract, the financial part of your contract, the incentives. Now it's all set. So they take you if you're the 50th player taken in this year's draft, they take what the kid last year got 50, what he got, and they add 10% to it. And then if it's first and second round, it's 5 years. If it's third and fourth, it's 4 years. And if it's fifth to seventh, it's 3 years. So they don't negotiate any of that. There's nothing negotiated. So those contracts are done. And the NFL wants to get away with. They want to get away with get agents out of the business. To be honest.
I would imagine, and I don't know this for a fact, and I'm not trying to dissuade anybody, but I think what they're doing is, here's our contract. You can get a lawyer or someone to look it over, but basically it's the same contract that every other player has. Yes. And Chip, what you're talking about is a slotted money amount. In other words, if I'll just take $1 million, if the number one pick in the draft gets $1 million, then between 1.9 and $1 million is what the second guy gets, and between 1.85 and 9, they're just a pecking order. And it's also structured until you become a free agent. That I would agree with you that the need for an agent or an agency to represent you has been minimized to almost nothing, because it's so standard.
Right. And what I tell parents, because I get a lot of parents who say, my son wants to give it a shot. He was on a scholarship to Alabama, and as his parent, I feel like I should invest in him and give him an opportunity, even if he doesn't have an agent. But what I say to them is, what, at the end of the day, you're investing in your child, and the return. Let your child give you 1.5%, because what you can do is you can hire an attorney, like you just said, and that's what I tell parents. Look, you don't need an agent. Really, you don't need an agent, because teams call me, and that's another thing that I say, look, because I've been doing this for 37 years, and because I've worked for the NFL in the Hall of Fame at Canton, every day when I was in Canton, every day everything I did was filmed, and it went to a private portal. So all 32 teams went on every day, excuse me, and watched me train those players. So when I pick up the phone and I call Atlanta or I call Kansas City, they take my call. So I tell players, look, I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm not your agent, but if you come and do everything that I think you can do and show that your athleticism matches your skills, then I'll pick up the phone and I'll call. And there's teams, again, Mark Duffner, who's a dear friend of mine, for 17 straight years, has taken one of my players that I called as an undrafted free agent. I was at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago, and I walked in, and he goes, and there were some other NFL guys there, and I didn't know him. He said, "Hey guys," he said, "this is my buddy Chip Smith." He said, "You guys probably know Chip. He started the combine training business." He said, "Let me just tell you this. He's my secret sauce. If he ever calls you on a player, you can take it to the bank." Because I tell players, look, I'm not. If you come here and you don't work, my reputation is all I have. But if you come and you put in the maximum effort, then I'll go to. I don't care if I've had all the bad boys in the NFL. I've had them all. And I said, look, the last perfect person that lived on this earth died on the cross. Okay, so I'm not here to cast a judgment on you. I need to know that you've changed and you've made priorities in your life, because you got to, and again, this is the stool, three-legged stool for me as a coach, is you have to be physically fit, mentally fit, and spiritually fit. And if you're not, that stool falls over. And so we try to incorporate that into our program. And we love these guys unconditionally. I mean, I tell them, every player that trains with me will tell you, I was up last night from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock this morning. I sent 800 texts. 800 texts I sent to players, and I'll do this tonight again for tomorrow on Thanksgiving. I've done it for 37 years.
Happy Thanksgiving. You bet. Yep.
Players, they text me, Coach, I'm waiting for your text. I can't have Thanksgiving until I get your text. And it's personalized. Again, it's not about me. It's about, I say two things. You're going to be in the best shape of your life, and you're going to know there's an old white dude in Swanee, Georgia that loves you unconditionally that will do anything in the world for you. And I said, that's the difference for me as a coach, because I'm very relational. And I tell parents, I'm going to love your son like he's mine. Okay, I'm going to look after him, but I'm going to be the type of coach that's going to tell him what he needs to hear and not what he wants to hear. Does it make sense? As parents, so I don't ever want a kid to say, well, you're a Christian and you never told me that was wrong. No, I'm going to tell you this wrong, but again, it's loving somebody unconditionally and being there. 2.8 years is the length of an NFL player.
Yeah.
How many years did you play?
11.
Incredible.
11. Yeah.
Incredible. 2.8 years, Harper, is what the length of the NFL is. You play 3 years, you're vested.
Yep.
That's no. So when I tell players, look, you got the rest of your life to accomplish something greater. Football is what you do. It doesn't define who you are as a person. It's just what you do. And again, all these things collectively, I bring in GMs. Billy Devaney's a buddy of mine. I bring him in to sit, had an interview. We bring in NFLPA to talk to them about being professionals. I mean, it's so much more than just the training that you have to provide for these kids. Again, that's what separates me, I think, from everybody else. We have family time one night a week. We'll take the kids out to like Dave and Buster's and we'll have it catered. We'll bowl, we'll shoot pool. We get to know each other and hang out as, in that environment. So, it's so much more than just running 40s. And obviously it's very important. That's what they're there for. But Billy, but for us, we want to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned. I give them a book that has, we teach them how to take the Wonderlic test, which is the aptitude test. I've got all 4 of the tests. We tell them how to take it. We bring in a family life person that sits down with them and says, okay, here's how you take the test. So again, it's preparing them, empowering them, protecting them, in the process. And it's just so much more. There's a lot of great trainers. I'm certainly not the only one out there. There's a lot of really great trainers. But I think for me, knowing what they need and having done it for so long, I'm able to give them more. It's just part of what we do from the experience of just training that many NFL players. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things, Chip, one of the things that I thought, was very unique about you, you invited me a couple years ago to work out with a young offensive lineman who wanted to learn how to long snap. He thought he could do it, and you asked me to just observe him and watch him for about an hour. And instead of blowing smoke up a young boy's butt and just saying, "Oh yeah, we got this taken care of," you asked me point blank after I had worked with this guy what you thought, and I said, "Chip, I don't know if he should waste his time. He really wasn't a very good snapper. I'm not saying he wasn't bad, but he was serviceable, but he certainly wasn't going to get drafted because of his snapping. It was just an extra add-on, the more you could do type of a philosophy." And I think right after that, he said, "I'm not going to snap anymore. I'm going to develop other things. And I'm going to work on stuff that I need to, because I don't want to waste any of my time on snapping when I can be working on my feet or working on, learning how to press or pass block a little bit better." So that's one of the things about what your system and what you're trying to do is, look, I'll work on anything that you want to work on, but let's be realistic. Let's get if you want to get to the next level, here's the way we can do it. And you make the plan with them, like you told us.
Right. Well, I developed what's called a performance index for the league probably 15 years ago for each position. So what I'm having done, train more guys for the NFL Combine than anybody live. So I've taken the numbers and in position, what's good, fair, poor, and excellent for each position. So when a kid comes in, I'm able to quantify where he's at and let him look, how does he compare to, 3,500 NFL players that we've trained. So that helps too, being realistic, because again, everybody that comes to me, especially skill kids, "Oh yeah, I run a 4.2. I'm like, "No, you don't. You don't run a 4.240. I hope you do, but you don't, but because they have coaches that clock them with handheld clocks, they clock them slow coming in and going out to make themselves look good. Where I use a true electronic timing, I can't manipulate the clock. How much better you get depending upon how hard you work. So, we set realistic goals, but at the end of the day, if I've taken a 10th off your 40 time, that's significant. Can it get better? Yeah, for sure. But I can't, if I got a handheld stopwatch, I get kids that, I could tell you story after story. I had a kid that come in one day, played at a big time school. So yeah, I ran a 4.3. He ran a 4.7. He said, "I never run a 4.7. I said, "Run it again." I had 4 coaches there with me. Ran it again, ran a 4.7. A 4.7. I said, "Dude, you just ran it twice. You've never run a 4.3. Now, can you get better?" Because the realistic thing is, when a kid is that fast, that's, I've had 3,700 players. I've had 5 guys running to 4.3. 5.
Wow.
They were all track guys, every one of them. So again, it doesn't happen when these guys say that they run that kind of speed. And that's kind of my soapbox, because in the 80s, I studied speed development in Russia. The last white guy that won the 100 meters was a guy named Larry Borzoff in the 72 Olympics. And as an athlete myself, my attributes as a running back were my speed. I was fast. I was the fastest I went to a big public high school. I was the fastest kid at my high school. My dad was faster than me. My grandmother's nickname was Speed. She was fast. My kids all played at Division I. They were, the fastest players on their team, Cal Berkeley and Duke and VMI. So speed was something I always was interested in, but I was told that you could not increase linear speed, that you were born with a certain number of fast twitch muscle fibers and you could not increase that. I didn't believe that, but that's what we were taught in school. So in 1987, as part of President Reagan's Culture Exchange Program, I was sitting in a commercial gym one day and I was riding a bicycle, and I saw on the back of a Wall Street Journal said, "Looking for sports medicine practitioners to study abroad as part of President Reagan's culture exchange programs, and it said sports medicine coaches. And so I called them, and they said, well, we're going to take 6 Americans and 4 Canadians to Russia, and this is what you can study. And speed development was one for me, and pre and post pubescent, because again, we were told that you never lifted weights before puberty, because you close the epiphyseal cell in the long bone and stunted growth. I didn't believe that, because again, the East Germans and the Russians had started guys at a young age, but that's what happened. So anyway, I got selected to go, and I went over there, and the Russians were, their facilities were archaic, but their methodology was far greater than anything that we did. And again, I figured if they can make white guys fast, they were on to something. And their system, when I got back, I sat down one day on a Sunday after church, and I wrote out a 6-week program. And it was I developed it. Now my system's called the MORE. It's an acronym for movement, overspeed, resistance, and reaction. And true sports speed is reaction speed, where you see something, you hear it, your brain processes that. That's a learned response. And so I developed my system based on that. I wrote a master's program in human performance at Liberty. I've had over 1,000 kids take my master's program there. I've got a national certification in my system. So I'm the only performance coach in the U.S. that has a master's program in human performance. So we know that it works because we've gotten results. And we've had universities that come in, Georgia State, Kennesaw State. They'll come in and they'll say, "Hey, we want to run a test on this. Tell us about this." And they've conferred, denied it. Not all the time. Most of the time, it's conferred. Why it works. But again, there are a lot of coaches that just make stuff up, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have a system that I developed, so I know the system. I wrote it. I wrote the master's book. I wrote another book about my system. So we know what we're doing. And again, like I said, when you got kids that come in that got one shot at the biggest job interview of their life, you want them to feel comfortable. You want them to know that you know what you're doing. And as parents, they've got to feel good because again, it's the kid. If a kid does, here's what happens, Harper. Kid, runs slow. He points his finger at his coach and says, if I'd have trained with so and so, I'd have run faster. Well, you know what? Maybe he would have, but maybe he didn't put the work in. So there's a lot of things that happen. But I don't take credit when a guy does good, and I don't take credit when they do bad. That's part of the process, But it's a very intense 2 months of training.
Sure. Well, I would imagine anything to be scientific, it has to be measurable and repeatable. That's the way I understand it.
Yeah,
and for
right.
you to be able to say, here's what I learned in Moscow. And if you run and you're standing straight up and you don't have a good body lean, that's a measurable effect that will ultimately say, okay, here's part of your problem, kid. This is why you're slow. You've got to work on this. You have to work on your arm movement. You've got to work on your leg lift. We've got to work on strengthening the muscle groups that are supporting all of that system, your high knees and all that, and doing it in a manner where you get quicker, better, faster results. Is that part of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the difference. In my system, in my 40s, when we're running 40s, we break it down. We're very scientific. In a 10, we want our athletes to take 7 strides in a 10, 11 strides in a 20, 18, 40. Because every time your foot hits the ground, tick, 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 tick. So if I can increase your 2 ways to get faster: stride length and stride frequency, the amount of foot. So when you're coming out of the blocks, you're taking a third of your steps in your first 10 to generate top end speed, and you don't even reach top end speed until you get to 55 meters, so 60 yards. So you're accelerating the whole way through. But we break it down and we train very specific to those things. Whether it's the short shell and the L drill, whether it's the vert, so we break all those drills down and we train very movement specific to make athletes better at what they've got to perform in. And they buy it and they see, because they start seeing results. When you add resistance in the movement without impeding the mechanics of the actual movement, you take it off and all of a sudden you recruit an explosive fiber, and your first step explosion is like pow, you're jumping. It's phenomenal. So yeah, I get excited because I see a result in a short period of time. For kids that you never thought they would, they could do what they've accomplished. But believing in them, I think, is a big part of what we do.
Sure. And a lot of the resistance, for those that are listening that may not understand, would it be correct to say the correlation might be when you in the batter's box and you put a donut on the bat to add to the weight of the bat, and then you take the donut off and then you walk up to the plate, the bat isn't any lighter than what it was. It's just lighter than when you were swinging it. Is there any similarity with that? Yeah.
No. So that's a great analogy. So I developed a hitting harness, a hitting harness for baseball to increase bat speed. Okay. This hip action is what generates velocity, club head speed in golf, tennis speed and racket speed, and bat speed. Okay. When you train a very specific movement, you recruit explosive fibers. So it's called the all or none principle. When your muscle fibers fire, this one fires, and then these four come along for the ride. Then the next time, these two, and then these three. And the next time you train in that system, it's these three and these two. Then the next time it's this one and this one. And the next time it's all five. So you continue to recruit explosive fiber by progressive resistance, just like in the weight room, because we add resistance with cords. And for example, in my hitting, I had 20 pro baseball guys probably 10 years ago now. We did pre and post testing. The worst was you remember Dan Ugla? Dan put 9 miles an hour on his 9 miles an hour on his bat speed. 9 miles an hour on his bat speed.
Okay.
In 6 weeks. He played 13 years.
Yeah, he did.
Charlie Blackman won the National League title. 17 miles an hour on his bat speed.
Wow.
So we did
Charlie
testing.
Charlie he just went up the road. He's a local kid. He went to North Gwinnett High School, didn't he?
That's exactly right. So he grew up with my kids, and I coached him growing up.
How about that?
Again, you got to be able to quantify what you're saying, because what happens is these on the corner and they go, look at me. I train Jalen Hurts. Okay, well, I've got 3,700 Jalen Hurts, but I don't stand on the corner and do that. And that's what people in our industry do. They're on social media, So a parent, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have this guy go train, Trip, my son, he's like me, he's very humble. And when I walk in his facility in Hammersmith Sports, I walk up to a family and I say, hey, I'm Coach Chip Smith. I'm Trip's father. Do you know anything about Trip? Charlie. Chuck, we call him Chuck. Anyway, he goes, no, I don't know much about him. I said, well, has Tripp ever told you that he lived with Albert Hainsworth when Albert Hainsworth did a $1 million deal? No, I didn't know that. Did Tripp ever tell you that he lived in China for 2 years, 10 silver and 2 bronze? I didn't know that. Did Tripp ever tell you that Todd Helton, who just got put into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, he lived with Todd Helton and trained him? No, he never told me that. I said, so the point I'm making, son, who's playing, 9th grade baseball, is working with a guy that's worked with the top professionals in the world. But he's not saying, look at me. He's working for your son. But again, as parents only hear what they see until they actually come in. And then once they come in and they, he treats them like kids. I mean, like they're his children. They come in and they work, and they'll be NFL players in there. They'll be this past week, I took on the job as the director of performance for the women's pro volleyball team, the Atlanta Vibe, and we got some kids that been home this week, and they're in there working out with some of the girls. These girls are the best in the world. I mean, played in the Olympics. They're in there just training. And I've got little teeny kids, 8, 9, 10 kids, and parents are like, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, it is amazing. Because if these people have bought into what we're doing and they're the best in the world at what they do, don't you think you probably made the right decision to have your child train with Tripp at Hammersmith Sports? I mean, again, I'm prejudiced, but I mean, he's a way better coach than me. and he helped me write my master's program. But again, I mean, it's about getting results, and I think once you get results, the proof's in the pudding.
Well, you brought it up. So let's talk a little bit about Trip. We'll talk about Zach a little bit and Ian. When I was in your facility once, it's still one of the greatest pictures I've ever seen. And I believe it's Zach blocking a punt while going over the personal protector when he was in high school. And you looking at it right now? Is it in your it's in your office?
Let me grab it.
Man, that is the coolest pic. It just, to me, I mean, this picture, folks, when Chip comes back, it's a picture of his son who's blocking this kick. You'll see it. But to me, all you got to do is just put effort, right? Look at that.
There we go.
That guy was 6'5", and Zach jumped over him and landed on his feet. That play was the number 2 play in the state of Georgia his senior year. Crazy, huh?
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Effort. That's all I got to put. That's called effort, That's what a Green Beret or a U.S. Marine or a Black Ops just, we got to get the job done, and that's basically what he did.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Zach went to Cal Berkeley, and when he got out to Cal, they did his testing and evaluation, and he ran a 4.34 at 4.34 at 240, I think, and he broke Marshawn Lynch's vertical. He jumped 40-inch vertical.
Wow.
Was too many white boys jumping 40-inch vertical. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you got to be taking some serious fertilizer." But obviously he wasn't. But again, when you trust the process and you get results, and that's what I tell parents. I say, look, I've lived it as a dad with my own kids. I've seen them. I've seen what they did once they bought in and decided they wanted to play at another level. I said, here's what you got to do. You got to do it in the club first, and then while your buddies are partying and playing, then you got to come in. You got to be in the weight room. You got to be out here running and doing your speed work, and they bought in, and I mean. If I'd have been paying to have them trained, I would have got a heck of a return on my investment for the schools that they went to, So,
yeah.
Anyway,
well, it's not just professional though. You just mentioned there's kids. They're not even 10 years old. So whatever level, I always say that any sport, doesn't matter if you're throwing darts or whatever, it starts with your feet. The power goes through your hips and then eventually through your shoulders and arms. If you're a baseball player, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Same with football and basketball. It's basically the same, but it all starts with your feet. And just having good footwork can make you a guy that instead of being on the bench, now you're playing because you can move, you can change direction, you can have some force and power, you can improve your speed. So many different levels of being able to enhance the talent that you already have because you're training the right way. So that this is also for high school kids or for college kids or ones that want to get into high school or college, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I told my kids growing up, I said, look, I don't care what you do. I don't care what sport you play. But I want you to be the best. I'm not going to be content with being mediocre. I want you to be the best that you can be. If you're going to be a piano player, you be the best. You're going to be able to carry your piano around with you, But whatever it is that you do, I want you to be able to be the best that you can be. And I'm not going to be content with mediocrity. That's not how I raise my kids, And I expect them to put the work in. And I wasn't a hard daddy. I was not one of these dads that because I played that, I put pressure on them. I didn't. My kids did. They did Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They rode motorbikes. One of my sons was a pro wakeboarder. They've done everything. They played basketball. They played softball. Baseball and all the sports. But I said, whatever you're going to do, you're going to do the best you can be. So. It's important.
work at it hard. Let's have some fun, but let's make sure we don't forget the work. There's an order to it. You mentioned just before we went on the air. I did not know that this fact about Liberty, but I want before we go to Liberty, talk about you grew up in Virginia near the
Virginia,
water,
yeah,
went to high
right.
school. Is that where your passion began? I know for a lot of folks it does at the
Yeah.
high school where, hey, I really like these sports things. This athletic is, this is what I'm good at. Is that what it was like for you?
You know what? It was very, yes, because my father had been in the military, and he taught me. He got into weightlifting when he was in the Navy, and so when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 years old, he had a little weight bench in our garage, and so he started weightlifting when I was young, and so I just I liked it, and my mom was a sports nut. She loved football, and so growing up, I played all sports as well, and so but my mom was really probably more of an influence in the sports world. My dad was typical dad providing for his family, and 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 he was musically inclined, could play the piano, and was just a wonderful human being. But he didn't play a lot of sports. But my mom really encouraged me in the physical part. She would say, crying's not allowed. I mean, literally, I didn't cry until I was like a senior in high school when I had a separated shoulder and a broken nose, and I'll tell you this story. Talking about my career at Liberty, and I'm sure you have a million stories as well. But my sophomore year, I played baseball, and we were playing at the University of South Carolina in Columbia, and I hit the ball down the third base line, and the first baseman stepped, and when he stepped, he broke my ankle. So they took me to the hospital and so that was on a Saturday. We got back to Lynchburg, and Sunday morning, I told my roommate, I said, "Hey, come in. I'm getting in the shower. I'm gonna get in the tub. Bring me a knife." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "We're cutting this cast off. I'm not missing playing baseball." We cut that cast off, and I taped my ankle, and I played a whole year with a broken ankle. I had 38 stolen bases. Now, when I was inducted to Liberty's Hall of Fame, and my baseball coach was there, Al Worthington, who had played a long time in the bigs, and he got up and he said, "I tell you what," he said, "that Chip Smith don't hurt like a normal man." But my mother was that way. I'd fall down and bust my head or bust my elbow, and I needed 50 stitches, and she'd say, "Oh, you're tough. Don't cry. You're good." And I didn't. So, it's today's. I mean, kids today, it's not the same. And I was stupid. I was dumb. In fact, when I went back to the doc at the end of the season, I went back in the doctor. My ankle was killing me, and I walked in. He goes, "Oh, to see about your ankle?" And I said, "Yes, get out." He said, "Obviously, you got your medical degree, somewhere better than me, and you know what you're doing. So I'm not treating you. Get out of here." So I was pretty dumb.
You're not going to listen to me anyway, Smith. Get the heck out of here. Next. Oh my goodness. Well, you mentioned Liberty. Now, right behind you, there's the football. You scored the very first touchdown in Liberty football history. Is that correct?
I did. I was their first scholarship athlete. When I started the school, I had actually committed to play at the University of North Carolina, and I wanted to play baseball, and they wouldn't let me. There you go. They wouldn't let me play at UNC, and so Dr. Falwell recruited me, and he said, "Hey, if you come to Liberty, we'll let you do both." And so I said, "You know what? I'll take that." So I ended up coming to Liberty and scored the first touchdown in the school's history. Had the first hit in baseball as leadoff second baseman. Played all 4 years of both, and had a great experience helping them build the program. Obviously, it's nothing compared to what it is today, but having a little bit to do with it.
Well, I would imagine it takes a little bit of imagination and some guts to go to a program that doesn't have any history. UNC has a proud history of both football and baseball. They wouldn't let you do both. So you said, I'm going to go somewhere where I can. And then you go to a place that hasn't done anything in the past. I guess there's an excitement that's a part of that, but also there's a portion of it. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. We could be really bad, but the competitive level, and especially lately, what Liberty has invested into their athletic program, you've certainly got to be proud to be a part of what they've been able to accomplish.
Well, it was crazy because they, so my, when I played in high school, the area that I played in is where Michael Vick and Marcus Vick and Tyrod Taylor, and I mean, a lot of really good players. I played in the NFL, lived in Tidewater where I grew up. So it was a really good football area. And so, I was recruited. I was offered by UNC, I was offered by Navy, and I was offered by Virginia Tech. And none of them would let me play baseball. But and I took a visit to Tennessee. Well, when I went to Liberty, I went up there. My first year, the coach that recruited for Naval Academy, his name was Rock Royer. Rock came to Liberty and was Liberty's first football coach. So I was the only one that had an existing relationship with Rock Royer. He came to my house and recruited me as a senior. And so when he walked into the school and when they said, "Okay, here's our new football coach," he looked at me and he's like, "That's my guy." I mean, he freaked out. Because he knew, my faith is very important to me, and don't know how much I can talk about that, but he was a very phenomenal Christian man, and when he recruited me for the Naval Academy, and this was war. This was back in 70, 71, and he walked in my house. My mother had cooked dinner for us, and he sat at my table. And he looked across at me, and Rock Royer looked at me, and he goes, "Chip, before we start talking football, I need to ask you a very important question." And I said, "Okay." He said, "If you died right now, where would you spend eternity?" I looked at my dad because I just became a Christian myself. I said, "I'd go to heaven." He said, "All right." And he asked me to explain how I knew, which I did. He reached his hand. He said, "Well, now we got that out of the way, we can talk football." I actually, he was, and again, God knew about that deal because, I didn't know anything about Liberty. They were they were just starting, and Dr. Falwell had his vision for the school, which, by the way, today Liberty just ranked is there's 90 or 78 or 80,000 students at Liberty now. It's the biggest university in the world.
Wow.
Crazy.
Amazing.
Crazy. And their endowment's like $2 billion. Their facilities are phenomenal. I mean, but just to see that, having grown up, and experienced that, and my teammates, it was rough. I mean, we had nothing. I think about, all the guys at UNC I was good buddies with, and I'm still good buddies with it. When that recruiting class in my senior year, we stayed in contact. In Carolina, I made my sophomore year to transfer, and I didn't. I said, "You know what? I made a commitment to him, and I'm going to honor that commitment," which I didn't. I didn't do that to UNC from the get-go, but I did stay there. But it's just see how God works, and for me, it was the right decision, and I was very fortunate. I played every snap all four years. I never missed a game. Started all 4 years of football, all 4 years of baseball, and was very, very blessed to lead that program in those early years and have friends for life. I mean, your teammates are your best buds, but to see the facilities and what they have today, it's just, oh my gosh, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Have you ever been up there?
I have not been to the school. No, I will tell this story. George Pugh was an assistant coach with Georgia State, and we were practicing once at Alabama, and he went to Alabama back in the early 70s. And so I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, George, what's different about the campus now compared to when you were here?" He goes, "Well, that building there didn't exist, And that building there wasn't there, and that practice parking lot or practice facility and parking lot, that wasn't there. And that 2-story building 30 years ago is now a 10-story building. I can only imagine that it's much like that with you and Liberty's campus. Then there's stuff here that didn't exist back when I was going to school.
Yeah, that was pretty true for us as well. But you know, it's fun now to see. I mean, you know, they went to Division One. We were Division One in baseball when I was there. I mean, I played. I mean, Sid Bream. That's where Sid played.
Yep.
Sid was there, and he came the year after me. And we had a bunch. We had 5 guys drafted off of my college baseball team. And we had a really good baseball program. And again, we beat South Carolina my senior year. They were ranked number 1 in the nation, and we beat them in Lynchburg 13-6. And they went on and played in the College World Series back when Bob Horner played for them at Arizona State.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, so you think about that. I mean, people talk about, you know, the wins in Liberty when they beat Baylor a few years back in football. They were like, "Well, that's a great win." I said, "No. Think about a school that's 4 years old. We played the number one baseball program in the country, Division One, South Carolina, and they had Mookie Wilson. They had a ton of really good baseball guys that played. Bobby Richardson was their head coach. You remember him? He ended up coming to Liberty the year after I left. They hired him, and he came to Liberty. And he was a coach there for a long time. But I mean, he came to our locker room. I mean, he came to our dugout after our game. We beat him in Lynchburg, and you know, again, they were ranked number 1 in the nation, and we were good. We were probably 30 and maybe 15. I don't know, maybe 10. And he came. He was like, "Man," he said, "I would have never believed that a little Baptist school like Liberty, you know, could play and compete with us." And you know, and he was blown away. And that to me, that was the greatest victory in any sport that Liberty's ever played in, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that was more of an impossibility, right? There's no way that this group of kids from Liberty can match up on paper or on the field with the talent level and the expertise that South Carolina had. But you beat them.
That was David and Goliath. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was you know, a fun experience, and yeah, it was a good time.
Was there a time before you went to that seminar, or actually when you answered the ad, really for going to Russia, that you knew that training and coaching and the kinetic movement was a part of what your life's work was going to be?
You know what? I think so. I had been doing strength training back in the 70s when I got out of school. I actually moved down here and had a place in downtown Atlanta, and I got to know it's a Marriott, and I got to know a bunch of different teams that would come to Atlanta to play the Hawks or the Braves, and so I picked up, started doing personal training back in the late 70s with some different teams. There's no such thing as strength coaches at that time, so they would bring me in just to write a program for a team. So I did that, and then, but the speed part that just always interests me. I mean, I've been doing strength training since I was, a young kid, and I could get guys big and strong, but it didn't equate to making them a better athlete. And that's what the Russians said to me. They said, "Look, you guys and girls are really good at getting your athletes big and strong, but it doesn't make them better at the sport they play." And I'm like, "You're exactly right." They said, because what you do, and a lot of schools still do this. As a long snapper, you should be training completely different than a DB. And a DB should be training completely different than a quarterback. And a quarterback should be training different than a wide receiver. So if you understand that and understand movement, which is what my system is called, the MORE, movement over system reaction, if you can add those components to that, better at what you do. So if I'm working with you as a long snapper, which I trained Pat Manley years, who the Manley Award, and by the way, not to give you props, but I am going to give you props. Do you know that your position is the only position that's not in the Hall of Fame? That's a travesty.
Nobody.
That is a travesty.
It's like we don't even exist.
That is a travesty. until you miss one snap.
Yeah.
I've had a ton. I've had a ton of long snappers in the NFL, and I mean that skill is phenomenal. I mean Patrick and you can do the same thing. I know he can put it on the right hip, left hip, threads up, threads down. He could get in 0.68, 0.58 points. I mean he could wherever you needed to put it, you could do it. And that's why you played a long time. But when I was in Canton, I was talking to Pat Manley, and I was like, what? Why do they not have any long? I mean, they got kick returners. They got they got every position but long snappers. Why are until you miss a snap? Why are you not important? You should be. You're right there. So I mean,
well, is what it, hey, another thing about the Russian, if you don't mind me going back to you with that, I'm going to go back to the first great Russian hockey coach, and I can't remember his name right now. Viktor Tradich was the second guy. In the 80 Olympics, Viktor was the guy that was behind the bench, and I'm not talking about him, the one previous to him. And somebody from Canada says to him, he goes, well, our 5 against your 5, we'll beat you every time. He goes, you know what? Your 1 against my 1, I give the edge to Canada every time. But if it were 2-on-2, I think Russia would tie you. If it was 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, we train as a team. You train as a player and an individual. You train as a left winger or a center or a defenseman. We train to sweep all around, and I never thought of it before like that. Can you incorporate a little bit of what the Russian philosophy, like you were talking about a little while ago, in terms of how you train individual players? They look at athleticism, not just one performing player in a position. Go. I'm talking too much. You go ahead, Chip.
No. That's a great. I think that what the Russians did, and what they convinced me, is that they said, okay, what we do is we have a whole team of people that work with our athletes. So, for example, let's say you're a Russian weightlifter. You come in on Monday and you pull from the floor to the knee. That's all you do on Monday. You pull from the floor to the knee in weightlifting. Then you go from the knee to the hip on Tuesday. Then Wednesday you go from the hip to the rack. And then Thursday you go from the rack to the press. So they break down very specific movements in one total movement and make you better and stronger and more explosive in all those minute movements. So collectively, when you do the full lift on Friday, you have gotten so much more explosive because you've broken it down to each small movement. That made a lot of sense to me as a coach. If we could, if there's something that I can make you quicker or more explosive or better reaction, then it's going to translate to making you better at what you do on the field a quarter of the diamond. And so that's exactly what we've done in my system, is that we're able to break it down to movement to make you, let's say you come to me and you say, all right, Chip, my hips, I got to work on getting my hips a little bit more explosive because you're driving your hips back as your long snap. Okay. In that movement. Well, you get in the weight room, there's not really anything you can do in the weight room to mix that. But what I said is, okay, I can figure out how to load. I can load your hips by adding resistance, maybe with some cords, maybe with a harness or something I've invented. And again, we're recruiting explosive fibers so that when you take that off, the muscle fibers that you recruited think it's still there, and they fire really explosive to make you better and more explosive in that particular movement. So it doesn't matter. For example, this is another example. So I trained Jalen Hurts. So when Jalen got to me, he said, Coach, he said, I'm going to ask you a question. He said, did they test my velocity? Yeah, you didn't know that? He said, no, I didn't know that. I said, yeah, when you go to the NFL Combine, they're going to test your velocity, your throwing velocity. He said, do you have anything for it? I said, absolutely. Absolutely. So every day I put him in my throwing harness and I had him throw in my harness. And we did pre and post testing, and I think he put 4 miles an hour on his velocity. So when he got to Indy, dude, he was the number one. He had the most velocity. They couldn't believe it. They were like, man, we had no idea he could throw that. And he laughed. He was like, I didn't have any idea I could throw it that fast. I mean, but we trained that specific movement for him that showcased that because again, I knew that they were going to do that. He didn't know that. Nobody ever told him, hey, they're looking for velocity you're throwing. So again, that's going back to what you're saying. You can collectively, you can take all those movements and you can train those movements without impeding the mechanics. And so you can't add so much weight when you swing a bat where you got a bunch of the donuts on it, so it's so heavy. It's a dynamic movement. You can't that impedes the mechanics of your movement. So you don't want to do that, but you do it by incorporating resistance and motion that you're doing on the field, the core of the diamond. So it doesn't matter what sport you play. So I'll tell you another interesting story. So excuse me. So I spent 2 years in China working with 14 Olympic teams. First day that I was in China, they take us around and they show us the whole facilities, and the facilities are like the university. Well, when they came to me, they said, we want you to come over and evaluate our program. I said, sure, I'd be honored to do that. So we were there. They call us in this meeting, and this guy goes, he's the head of the Chinese Olympic Committee, and he goes, today, Dr. Chen, will you please tell the fellas that they're going to use, we're going to let them train one of our teams. And I'm thinking, crap, I wasn't thinking I was going to come to China and train somebody. I thought I was just coming to observe. So he goes, so there's 3 people with me and another guy that's an academic guy from Texas and a young basketball performance coach. And I found out later that they had identified the 3 of us as the top guys in the country, and they brought all of us together. And so they were going to, so anyway, they looked at David, the young kid, and they go, today, coach, you're going to work with our women's soccer team. And he goes, okay, yeah, I'm good with that. So then he goes, this doctor, he's probably in his 40s, said, Dr. So-and-so, he said, today you're going to work with our men's volleyball team. And then he's really excited. He says, Dr. Chen, please tell Coach Smith that today he's going to train our current gold medalist from the Beijing Olympics in table tennis. I'm like, are you kidding me? Forrest Gump? Ping pong? I've never played a ping pong player in my life. Come on. So I'm standing there and I'm like, watch your practice. They said, yeah, you can watch your practice. So that afternoon, I said, okay, I got this. I bowed my head and said, dear Lord, I'm in deep trouble. Give me divine guidance right now. I never trained a ping pong player. So I dropped my head and said, Lord, give me divine guidance. I put my head up. God spoke to me and said, you know what? You train pro tennis players, forehands, backhands, reaction. You got this. So I'm standing there that afternoon. I'm training a guy who won Olympic gold in 3 Olympics, and I had him for the last one. He won gold for me. I'm standing there, I'm training him, and this famous Chinese coach walks over to me, to Dr. Chen, who's the interpreter, and she's their team doctor. And he goes, Dr. Chen, please tell Coach Smith, in all my years of training Olympic champions, I never see this type of training. I said, Dr. Chen, tell Mr. Lee, I never see this type of training. I just made it up. And he's like, oh, no, that's funny. I'm like, dude, I've never trained a table tennis player in my life. So I get home weeks later, and Dr. Chen calls me. She says, Coach Smith, you got the contract. I said, what contract? She said, what's a tryout? Because you were the oldest person there. They won Olympic gold in every Olympics in table tennis and badminton. And they said, you showed never seen before. And so they want to hire you to oversee their program, which I did for 2 years. But, and again, I had 3-meter diving, judo, gymnastics, weightlifting, table tennis, badminton. So, yeah. So the system works when you break it down, and when you find deficiencies, like you said, and then whatever that you're deficient in, and that's what I try to do with each NFL player or guys getting ready for the draft. I say, look, let's find out where your weaknesses are. I get a report from National and Blesto, who say what you're good for, in, and then I can say, all right, look, let's say you got tight hips, so you play high, whatever it is, you have no bend, you're no upper body strength. But I say, look, I know how to to address those things so that when you go to your pro day or to the combine, you're like, wow, we were really wrong. This kid's he's very flexible. So you learn knowing what you're doing.
No. Chip, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I was just saying, you learn to address weaknesses. Some guys are afraid of their weaknesses. You say, no, let's perform in a way that we enhance it, and it no longer becomes a weakness.
Yes, amen. And that's what I say. I said, look, when you work out for them, they're gonna be wow, who rated this kid? Who graded this kid? This kid's got great flexibility. This guy's really strong.
Yeah.
This guy can run. And again, that's buying into the process. For me as a coach, is selling a kid, the fact that, look, it doesn't matter what your deficiencies are. God didn't, he don't make mistakes. He didn't make you 1 centimeter you're supposed to be. So we can't worry about that. But all the other things, your weight, your strength, we're going to make you stronger and we're going to make you bigger, and here's how we're going to do that. So, again, once they start getting in and they start working and they start getting results, they'll coach, what if I was training like this my whole career? And again, I know that the NCAA, there's the 8-hour week rules. Strength coaches can only get guys for 8 hours a week, and they can't do what I do. I get them 6-8 hours a day. So it's intense, man. I mean, it's the process is really intense, but again, financially, what it's worth to buy into it is crazy. I had a kid that had a draft grade one time that ended up being the third player taken in the first round.
It works. It's amazing. And I liked what you were saying about the weightlifting, and you go from floor to knee and from knee to hip. That reminds me of the Roger Bannister world record first sub 4-minute mile. When they asked Roger when he finished with the race, how could you do this? Nobody's ever done this before. It was an invisible barrier that there was no human being that could do this. He goes, well, I just decided, I knew I could run 400, one lap in less than a minute. And so I just ran 4 laps in under a minute. And that's how it was so simple, but the way that he trained was different. And guess what? Nobody remembers all the people that have run the sub 4-minute after him because he was the first to do it. I guess you're kind of breaking things down in the same, we're going to run 1 lap under a minute. Then we're going to run 1 lap right at a minute. And we're going to run another one at a minute. We're going to run the last one at under a minute. And guess what? You're going to break the world record.
Yeah. I have a term called purposeful, and everything we do has a purpose of making you better at something you do. And it's really, it's not CrossFit. I'm not making crap up to make you sweat. And this is specific to what you do as an athlete. And so, again, there are a lot of guys that, that want, it's quality of work, not quantity of work, if that makes sense. Because again, there's a lot of guys who can make you sweat, but there's no benefit in what you're doing. It doesn't translate to the field, the court, of the diamond to make you a better athlete. That's kind of the difference in the more system that I develop than all these other training systems. There's a lot of really good, systems out there, but when people ask me, all right, coach, explain your system. Here's my system. If I want to go to Valdosta, Georgia, plenty of time, I can walk, and I can get there in probably, a month. Maybe longer. I don't know. I can take a car and get there in about 3.5 hours. Or I can get there, 2 hours. Or I can take a jet and get there in 30 minutes. Well, my system is a jet system. It's not a right way or a wrong way. It's just a faster way. And that's the difference in my system. The more is I've got to get results. I mean, think about this. I get a kid for 2 months, 8 weeks. I make more incremental increases with him in 8 weeks than he made in 5 years at his university. Brian Urlacher got to me, he weighed 235. He ran a 4.69 40 at 6.9% body fat. 2 months later, 8 weeks, he went to the NFL Combine. He weighed 262. He ran a 4.49 40, and he was at 4.9% body fat. How does that happen?
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing, but we've been doing that for years and years and years and years.
Yep. I would also like to ask all of the graduates that have been to your through your program. I've said this when I was in college, my freshman year. gosh, if I only knew what I know now when I was a high school senior, I'd have kicked tail. I would have been awesome. I mean, can you imagine how good you would have been if you were trained in your own system
Yeah.
at Liberty? They would have said, "Yeah, we'll let you play basketball too. We don't care. You're so stinking good at what you're doing. We'll let you play all three sports."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do some of your guys do that? Man, if I only did the Jalen Hurts example. Because one of the weaknesses coming out of his senior year and whether or not he'd be a top pick, well, we don't know if he can make that deep throw. Well, you added arm strength without really doing anything other than just increasing the speed and the strength of the rotator and all that kind of stuff. And he still had a great arm, but now you made it even better. That to me is something that I just find fascinating from a kinetic standpoint, micro dissecting this. It's just amazing how guys – and if imagine him going back and having his senior year all over again after training with you, if it would have been after his junior year.
Oh, he was, I love Jalen Hurts. I mean, I've been blessed to work with a lot of really great athletes, but Jalen's a better person he is an athlete. He's a great athlete. I'll just tell you this story. So he came out, he was the number 8th rated his senior year.
Right.
8th rated. One day I walk in the weight room, I walk out on the field, and I see him writing something on a whiteboard. And I'm like, what is he writing? So I walked in, everybody leaves, and I walked down there, and this is what he said. Greatness comes with patience. I cut that out. I've got it in my house. Greatness comes with patience. You know his story, his junior year, his senior year, being benched behind Tua. But so when he gets to me, and that story in itself, how he ended up coming to me, he went to the head coach and said, "Hey, I'm getting recruited by all these trainers to come train with. Who is the best guy in the country?" And the head coach, who's now at SC, said, "Oh, the guy you never heard of, a guy in Atlanta, Georgia, named Chip Smith." He said, "Okay." So he said, Jalen told me the story. He said, then I went to the weight room, and their strength coach is a guy named Benny, was a good friend of mine. So he went into Benny and said, "Benny, all these trainers, where should I do my combine training?" And Benny said, "Well, to be honest with you, the best guy in the country is a guy in Atlanta, Georgia, a guy named Chip Smith." He said, "Oh, that's funny because who's the coach at Southern Cal? What's the guy, the head coach at Southern Cal?"
Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley. So he said, "Coach Riley just told me the same thing, Coach Chip Smith." So he said, then Coach, he said, "I'm walking out of the weight room, and the assistant head strength coach comes in, Frank Davis, who I trained." He said, "Frank, man," he said, "all these guys are recruiting me." He said, where should I do my training?" Frank said, "Well, to be honest with you," he said, "I train with the best guy in the country, a guy in Atlanta, Georgia." He said, "You got to be kidding me, Chip Smith." He goes, "Yeah, I train with Chip." Frank said, "Yeah, I train with Chip." So then Jalen said, "I'm walking across the field going to my car to get my car." And our linebacker coach, and he's like, "Man, I've never heard of you. And I've got 4 people that have already told me you were the best guy for me to come and train with." So he said, I walk across the field, and our linebacker coach who played at Michigan, "Hey, man, you played in the league?" He goes, "Yeah, I played for 3 or 4 years." He said, "Like, where'd you do your training?" He said, "Man, I trained with a guy in Atlanta, Georgia." Jalen said, "You have got to be kidding me. You train with Chip Smith?" He goes, "Yeah, you know him?" He goes, "I don't, but I'm going to call him." So he got back to his house, and he called me, and he said, "Hey, I want to come to Atlanta, and I want to meet with you." So he comes in, he tells me a story. His dad's a coach and was military, and great, unbelievable young man, unbelievable. So he said, "Coach, my goal is I'm the number 8th rated quarterback in this year's draft. I want to be number 1 or number 2." And there were some good quarterbacks in that year's draft. I said, "All right, well, then you're going to be the fastest, the strongest. You're going to jump the highest. You're going to do the longest broad jump. We're going to blow them away with your athleticism." He said, "Okay, good." So as we're getting closer to the NFL Combine, I pre-test him 2 weeks before the Combine. He's running in the high 4.3s.
Mm-hmm.
So
wow.
I said, he went to Combine. He had the fastest 40. He ran a 4.4 at the Combine. He put 5 inches on his vert, 36 vert. He had the longest standing long jump. He had the fastest short shuttle. He had the fastest 3-cone. He was number 1 in all those drills. All right, except for the 40. So he called me from Indianapolis, and he goes, "Coach, I got to be honest with you." I said, "What, Jalen?" He goes, I didn't run as fast as I could. And I said, really? He goes, because when I got there, they all said, you're going to be a running back. And I was afraid if I ran in the 4.3s, they were going to say, well, look, this kid's nothing but a running back. So he held up. Wow. He didn't run his full. He was consistently running 4.3s for me. Yeah. But he ran a 4.4, which was way faster than anybody else. And then he was the second quarterback taken in the draft. He had the highest. I mean, but again, he played that. He played that. I mean, he was a hard worker. He squatted 600. I mean, just phenomenal athlete, and a great human being. I mean, just a wonderful human being. But yeah.
Well, the way the game is changed, Chip, the way the game has changed, your quarterback now with the RPO and from high school and all through college, it's kind of transferred over into the NFL. You're never going to see a guy under center ever again, or only if it's a goal line situation. With Philly does with the push that they've got, but an athletic, strong, a guy that can take a hit, and you've helped him in that respect as well. You've made him bigger, faster, stronger, so that he can endure more as long as he just takes care of himself. And Jalen's a great example of one of many guys that you've done that with, obviously.
Well, he's a tremendous athlete, and like I said, I don't take credit when he does good and credit when he does bad. But when you get somebody like him that could have an attitude, he was very humble. I mean, he never. In fact, when he first got to me, he said, Coach, he said, who's your hardest workers? I said, probably my offensive lineman. He said, I've got to do my skills work in the morning, but any days that I'm not, I come and work with them. I was like, absolutely, any group you want to. And so, I mean, his mindset was completely different. And, I knew he was special. I knew he was special because his last rep was always as hard as, he never took a rep off. He never said, I'm a quarterback. No, I ain't doing that. I mean, I've had some that are, spoiled. You played with them. I mean, this guy was like, I mean, if you're doing that drill, I'm doing that drill, and I'm going to do it better than you are. I mean, which I love. He just, so.
Well, that to me shows a brand of leadership. Like Tim didn't have the arm accuracy. He had the strength, right? He was a big, strong guy, but Tim was a leader in that respect that, hey, whatever anybody else is doing, I can do it as well. I'm going to do it. I'm going to show you through the example. And for Jalen to have that type of mentality just adds to my appeal of him as not only a quarterback, but as a human being.
No, he's a wonderful human being for sure. And, I mean, just, leads by example. I mean, takes responsibility. He's not one of these guys that points fingers and says, oh, he dropped the ball or, whatever. No, he's the leader. He's their leader.
Yeah. He does a great job of not commenting, period. There's a lot that anybody could say, and he doesn't say it. So he leaves that for everybody else. Hey, I threw the ball as best as I could, and if you didn't catch it, he's not going to criticize. He's amazing at that. Well, Chip, we've taken a lot of your time. Before we go, for anyone out there watching or listening that wants to know more about you, your facility, and how they can help their child or themselves, tell us how we can get a hold of either you or Trip or Zach. Ian is also part of your organization, Ian Campbell. So what do people do and where would they go?
So, we've got a facility in Suwanee. It's 200 Buford Highway, Hammersmith Sports. And you can reach out to us there and, and give me a call. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Coach Chip Smith. Go on, send me messages and I'll send my ebook. I've got an ebook that we put together a few years back, which is kind of a joke. I say a joke. It's 111 pages of clients. And so I got tired of these guys beating me up saying, don't train with Chip. He didn't have any, anybody significant. I'm like, really? Eight Hall of Famers are not significant?
Yeah.
I mean, but that's I'd rather be. Yeah.
Chip, one of the things that I'd want to know, if I'm outside of Swanee or Georgia or the eastern part of the country, is there a way that either online or other types of packages that you would have where people can learn what you're specifically trying to do and take advantage of your expertise, even though they're not able to get to your facility specifically in Georgia all the time? Is there a way to do that now? That you
There is. I mean, I've got a YouTube channel, Coach Chip Smith. Social media, I've got tons and tons and tons of videos. They can contact me through any of that, and then I can send them information. Don't mind doing that. If anybody's got questions about training, especially younger kids, if I can help them, I'd be glad to. Again, like I said, it's Coach Chip Smith on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff.
Well, speed, power. There's a change of direction. If you go online, you can see different aspects of things, and also some of the ropes and the resistance bands and very specific tools that you've created that can help and give access to an athlete, whether male or female, a sport like football or something as specific as maybe even golf, that you can help them out. Correct?
Absolutely. It doesn't matter what sport. We've had professionals in every sport. So no, any. I'll tell you this story real quick, and I'll let you go. I got a million stories. 5 years ago, I got a call from this agent. Said, "Coach, I got an athlete I want you to train." I said, "What does he play?" He said, "Well, it's not a he, it's a she." I said, "All right, what does she play?" He said, "Well, she doesn't really play a sport. She's the prima ballerina with the Bolshoi Ballet."
Oh, wow.
I said, "Really?"
Oh.
The number one ballerina in. They sent her to Georgia. She stayed here in Swanee at my house with my wife and I, and we trained her for I think 8 weeks. And during that time, she's known. I mean, they just did there's actually a movie that's out right now about her life. And but when she was here with me, we ended up having 5 of the primas in the South Korea Ballet, Atlanta Ballet, Tulsa Ballet, Bolshoi, and one more. So I had 5 of the top ballerinas in the world that came to Georgia, and we trained them. And it was pretty cool. I mean, those women are incredible. So yeah, we do awesome.
What was she looking to accomplish? To be more powerful or more athletic in order to be
rotational? A lot of rotational stuff. Because when they jump, they rotate. So her flexibility was good. That's her right there. Yeah, that's Joy Womack.
How about that? Wow. Good pick there, Logan. Good job. Of all the you left it anonymous on purpose, Chip, and then Logan was able to figure out the.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, incredible. One of my buddies was just on a flight last week, and he watched the movie that they did about her. So.
Well, if you look at that picture, that's an example to me. I'm not a ballet guy, but I saw that movie White Nights, I think is what it was called, and it had Gregory Hines, I think was the name of one of the actors, and Mikhail Berezhnikov. And Berezhnikov does 7 pirouettes perfectly in one part of the movie, and I go, "That's it. I'm done. I will never, ever, ever tease someone for doing something different, because that was an athletic move that many people that in my world would never even begin to try, let alone be able to land it. You know what I mean? And stick it.
Yeah.
Look at her toes. They're perfectly pointed, and that picture obviously resonates with how precise you have to look at every specific moment. And I would imagine the athleticism and the power that it takes to do something like that. It's incredible.
Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But Yeah, I've videoed every session I did with her. And, I mean, just her flexibility was just sick.
Yeah. Well, but her athleticism is something that makes everybody go, "Wow, that girl can bring it." You know what I mean? Very specific and talented and artistic. And I would imagine at one point or another, you're going, "How can I help this girl? How can I do that?" And
Yeah.
yet she after a while, but no, this is beneficial, sir. I'm much better because of what you did.
Well, it's funny you said that, because when she first reached out to me, I told her agent, I said, "Hey, I need you to have her call me." So she called me, and I said, "Joy," I said, "I don't know anything about being a prima ballerina. Can you send me some video?" She said, "Sure." So she sent me a video of her dancing at the Kremlin in front of Putin, privately.
Yeah.
Wow, this is pretty special. And I watched the film, and Trip, my son, we watched it, and I said, "Okay, here's what we got to do." And then when she got to us, I said, I want to show you some things that I think can help you, but I need you to tell me what you need, because you know your body better than I do. So here's what I do. But I said, let me come up with something, because I understand movement. And so I did, and then she incorporated a couple more things in it. But I mean, when those other 5 primas came and they started doing what she was doing, every one of them were like, "Wow, why have we never done this before? This is incredible." And if I could make a living just doing primas, I probably would have done that, because they're just hard working girls.
Yeah.
But,
well,
anyway,
I would imagine, Chip, and I'm jumping the gun here, a little bit of power, maybe not power lifting, but the core strength. Let's work on that. Obviously, rotational core strength, where you find certain weaknesses and be able to enhance and strengthen that. Vertical jump things, so you got to work your hips and your thighs.
Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. Well,
we use a Vertimax to increase our vertical, and she never used those before. We use that to increase vertical for our players that have to jump. And once I got her on that, and she started jumping. Oh my gosh, it just made all the sense in the world to her.
Oh man, well, a guy like me been there going, "I'm done. This girl jumps higher than I can, and she's stronger than I am, and she's 4'9", But that's awesome. Right. Absolutely awesome. Well, Chip, there are many, many stories. We'd love to have you back and to tell the other half or a third of them, because of all that you've been able to do. One more time, tell folks how they can get in touch with you to learn more about how they can get their son or daughter or themselves trained, or if they know somebody who's interested at working on their ballet moves.
They can reach out to us at my office is at Trips Hammersmith Sports, which is 200 Beaufort Highway in Swanee. So, and if you want to get in touch with me, you can Google me. And there's a bunch of connections where you can go on and it'll take you to social media, and just send me, inbox me and your name and number, and I'll get back to you. And if you're a potential NFL player, or somebody getting ready for the draft, I don't know if I should give my number out here, but
well, the number I have for you, Chip, is 770. It is 597-1740. That's for Hammer Smith Sports. 3 separate words. Okay. Hammer Smith Sports in Swanee, Georgia.
Right. So that's Trips. That's Trip. Yeah, you can call there, and then he can get me the message. And okay. I'll be glad to send you. You're looking for ebook for housing, food, training costs, that stuff. I'll be glad to send anybody that information.
Yep. And
skills work.
Very specific work if you want that, and then also very sports specific work for anyone from 7-8 years of age all the way up to senior citizens that want to improve their health and enhance what they've been given. Well, thank you so much, Chip. You've been awesome. It is always a pleasure to visit with you, and you do not disappoint. So thank you again for your participation
Appreciate
here today.
You having me.
Well,
sorry about this drainage.
Yeah, it's a shame that you don't take your own advice and work on your health. Work on your diet, Chip. Eat better and get some sleep. Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. Okay, that's my advice. But thank you so much, and again, a pleasure. So, folks, Chip Smith, very unique in what he does in terms of training some of the top end athletes in the world, not just for Olympic sports or the NFL, even for the Bolshoi Ballet. He will take whatever your athletic movement is and find a way to improve it. So for Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, I want to say thank you. And Logan, I need to apologize. I hogged the whole interview, but for Vincent Turner, who's not able to be with us today, he's obviously the host of the show. I'm Harper LeBel for 100 Yards of Football. We appreciate you being a part of today's show. Thank you so much for watching.